Hello there, welcome to another tech series with Silas Ogre. So in this tutorial, we're going to talk about PASETO, that's Platform-Agnostic Security Tokens. So I'll be showing you how to correctly integrate PASETO into your RESTful API. Of course, I believe for you to come to this tutorial, then you already understand what tokens are. So it's more like a replacement to the conventional JWT tokens, which we are all aware of. PASTE aims to be easy to use correctly and hard to use incorrectly, so providing you a robust solution for secure authentication and information exchange. Let's look at the structure of PASTE. So it has a header and a payload. So the header basically contains metadata about the token, including the version and the purpose. So we're going to look at how this is structured using Golang. PASTE versions, of course, we've got the V1 and the V2, and the V2 basically employs the XChacha 20 and then the Poly 1305. These are two encryption algorithms used to enhance security and performance. So we're going to actually use the version 2 in our example. Okay, so the local uses the symmetric key encryption with a shared secret. So this method is ideal for scenarios where both parties can securely manage a common key. And then the public purpose. So I think we're going to make use of the local purpose. But the public purpose basically employs their symmetric key signatures with public and private key pairs. So this approach is suitable for verifying the origin and integrity of messages without sharing secret keys. Okay, so symmetric key encryption in PASTE. So we'll look at key generation, we'll look at encryption, and we'll look at decryption. So there are symmetric key signatures in PASTE. You also look at key pair generation, that's for your private key, which usually is kept secret by the sender, while the corresponding public key is distributed widely. We'll also look at signing, and we'll also look at verification. Okay, so we're going to use two packages. Okay, one basically to help us with the ChaCha 20 and the Poly 1305 encryptions, right? So the purpose of the ChaCha 20 is for encryption, right? It scrambles data into unreadable form, okay? And then the Poly 1305 handles authentication and ensures that data integrity and detects tampering. So security in PASTE comes under the hood, comes in the sleeves, right? So you don't need to bother about how best to navigate your your structure. So this cryptographic library is particularly useful when sending personal data, financial informations, or password. So I won't bore you with going through each of these components, right? But the PASTE library features, of course, secure token creation, robust verification, flexible key management. All right. So let's jump into our code base to see how best we can integrate PASTE using Golang. So in our previous tutorial, we had a structure for Golang or for setting an API using Gene. So we're basically going to use the same code base to integrate PASTE. So if you are interested in getting the same code base, you can just check our GitHub repository and clone the repository and follow along with us. Okay, so I have these already. So I'm going to navigate into the Visual Studio Code. So the very first package, if we go to go.dev, we'll be looking at is the PASTE as a platform-agnostic security tokens. So we are going to need this package. So I'm going to copy these and quickly come to Visual Studio Code. So let's look for terminal and let's say go get. So I'm going to paste this, and instead of v2, let me increase this a bit so we can see clearly. So I say go get. Oh, it seems it didn't work, so let me copy this again. Copy it. So go get, paste this. So I don't want to, I just want to grab the entire package, so I'm going to hit enter. All right, so the package is up and running. Okay, so the next package we need actually is the cha 20 poly 1305. So it's like I opened that here, so let's check for it. So we can also just copy this and let's look for the package in go.dev. So let's search. So there we go. So this is a package. There are several other packages that does the same thing. Okay, so the one I'll be using, let's pick this other one by the AED. So there's one on the crypto, there's this one. So let's make use of this one. So I'm going to copy this, and in our terminal again, so let's come. Okay, I'm going to say go get, paste this. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to create inside our X directory. Let's create another folder here. Let's call this PASETO. So this is where we're going to create tokens and verify PASETO tokens. So it's very simple and straightforward. Okay, so I'm going to need a file here. Let's call this generator. Let's say generator.go. So what are we going to need here? So let's give it package. Let's say PASETO. Okay. Here this is going to be more like an interface. So let's say type generator is going to be an interface, and it's going to accept two parameters, or two functions rather. The first one is going to be generate token. So what do we expect here? So we're going to expect the user data, which is going to serve as our payload, right? So we're going to expect the user data, and then let's say we should also expect like a duration. Let's say time, that's the duration. Let's just say duration or expiry duration sort of. And then it's going to return. What is it going to return? It's going to return a token. It's going to return a token for us. Of course, when you generate a token, then we expect that a token should be returned. So this is going to generate a token. It's going to also return the authentication payload for us, and it's going to tell us if there is an error. So it's going to also return an error. And then we're going to have another function to verify token. So what this is going to basically do is going to take in the token, and it's going to return the authentication payload and an error. So let's say verify token. So what we can easily do here, so let's say token, this is going to be a string, and of course the payload. So here we're going to say user. So in our interfaces, in our previous tutorial, we created an interface for user. So in our previous tutorial, we created an interface for user. So let's go to interfaces. So in our previous tutorial, we created an interfaces for user. So let's go to interfaces. Let's scroll up to user data. Okay, so we've got user data. So we're going to say user is going to be user data, and we're going to give it, oh no, that shouldn't be user, just that. So we'll just do this. Let's say interfaces dot user data, and then the duration. So we're going to say this is going to be time dot duration. Okay, so we'll need a payload for this because at some point we're going to need to call receiver functions that will accept that payload. So it's best to generate it here. Okay, so let's create a new file here and call this a payload. Let's say payload.go. So in this package, we'll just give it a package of paste2. So we're going to create a function here. We'll say function new auth payload, right? Or new authentication payload. Let's write it in full. Still the same thing, new authentication payload. Okay, it's going to take in the user, because we'll need the user to encrypt into our payload, right? So we're going to say interfaces dot user data, and of course we'll need a duration for the payload. So we'll say time dot duration. This method is going to return a payload. So what payload is that is going to be? So let's say authentication payload. Let's create another method for it. So let's say type authentication. Let's say authentication payload, right? So this is going to accept the user, and then of course we have these already. So, and then take note, the user here enters the ID of the user, the email, username, full name, user role, and all of that. So we're going to copy these. Okay, so let's give it a JSON format. So the JSON notation is going to be, let's say user. Okay, so the next thing, let's say issued at. So this is going to be time. Okay, and then, oh, I spelled this wrongly, so let's say time. The JSON representation is going to be, we can just say IAT, or better still, let's write it in full. Let's say issued at. Okay, and then expired at. Let's say the token is going to expire at some point, so let's say expires at. So let's say time. Let's give it a JSON representation, and then let's say I like to do this, so let's just write expires at, but here we give it a small letter. So this is basically going to return, I'm going to write this in a new line, return payload. So it's going to be a pointer to the payload. It's going to return a payload and an error. Okay. So well, let's do this. Okay, that's what's going to return. So the next thing we'll do here is, let's say payload is going to be a pointer of authentication payload. Okay, so the user is going to be the user. Issued at is going to be now, the same time we are issuing it. So expires at is going to be time dot now add date duration. Why do we need add date there? So no, this shouldn't be add date, but it should rather be add, because we're using duration all along. So no need to change that to an integer or convert it to an integer. So here we're just going to return the payload, and let's also return nil here. So do we really need to return an error here? Okay, we're going to need this because we're going to implement this method eventually. Okay, so the next thing we'll do here, let's say let's create a function. So now this function is going to take in the payload. Okay, and what is a payload? The authentication payload. And this is going to be a pointer to the authentication payload. So it's going to be a receiver method. So the receiver method is not going to accept any function or any argument, but it's already a receiver. So we're going to get the payload from there, and then we'll say error. So it's going to return an error. So let's say if time.now is after payload.expires at. So at this juncture, we'll tell you that, let's say errors dot new, let's say your token is expired. Okay, otherwise we'll just return new to tell you that, okay, there was no error, so it's valid. Okay, so we've done this. So the next thing we're going to do is to create a file that handles token generation. So in here, let's create another file. Let's say PASETO generator. Let's say PASETO generator.go. So we're going to write some test cases here too. So let's also say PASETO generator underscore test dot go. So we are going to test to see if we are doing the correct thing. So that's why we need the test file there. And of course, in Golang, you just create your test cases where you've got the actual file. So this file, we're going to test it here. So we'll just write it here. Okay, so the next thing we'll do in our PASETO generator is to create a struct here. Let's call these let's say PASETO generator. So this is going to be a struct. Okay, so here we're going to do the main work. So we're going to need the Chacha20 poly 1305 package. Remember, this package is a cryptographic library that combines two algorithms. That's the Chacha20 and the poly 1305 to encrypt and protect data. So another question you might ask is, why is this package useful? So when you need to send sensitive information like your personal data, financial information over the internet, okay, so you want to be sure that you want to be sure that no one else can read or change the information. Okay, so this package helps you achieve that by ensuring that the data hasn't been tampered with. Okay, that's the poly 1305. So the Chacha 20 handles the encryption. Poly 1305 ensures that it's not tampered with. So we're going to need the two packages here. So the first package we're definitely going to need is a PASETO package to help us generate PASETO tokens. So right here we're going to say PASETO. So let's say PASETO, we had installed the packages earlier. Okay, so we'll just say PASETO.v2. Made a mistake here, so that should be PASETO.v2. Okay, so we're actually going to have a symmetric key which we will use to generate our tokens. So we'll say symmetric key is going to be a byte. Okay, so that's what we're going to need in that structure. So here we're going to say function new PASETO generator. Okay, so it's going to accept the symmetric key, which is going to be a string, and it's going to return the generator. Remember, we created the generator here already. So where is it? So this is it, the generator. So the generator here basically takes in two functions, generate token and verify token. So let me remove these comments, they are not well detailed enough, so let's just leave it like that. So in here we're going to return the generator and then an error. Okay, so now let's say if the length of the symmetric key, okay, is not equals to the charge, let's say char 20 poly 1305 dot the key size. Okay, we can say return nil here, and let's return a formatted error F. So let's say invalid key size, or invalid, let's just write this in full, let's say invalid symmetric key size. Okay, and then let's say expected, or it should be let's %d to so and so number of characters. Okay, so there we're going to say that should be chapter 13 polio 5 key size. Okay, so I'm going to snap this down. So let's format that nicely. We know our screen size is very big. We increase the font a lot so that we can see what we're doing. So the next thing we're going to do here, at this point, we can say generator is, let's have a pointer to PASETO generator. So let's say PASETO is going to be PASETO.new v2. So we're using the version 2. Okay, and then the symmetric key is going to be the byte. It's going to be a byte. Sorry, that's not right. It's going to be a byte. So basically convert the symmetric key to a byte. Okay, so that's what we're doing there. And then we're going to return generator. Okay, we're going to return generator and no error. So we've got an error here. Let's see what the issue is. Cannot use generator as generator value in return statement. PASETO does not implement generator. Missing method generate token. Okay, so we are actually returning this, and in this we have two methods. Okay, so I'm going to use layman explanations here so you understand what we're trying to do here. So this error is simply telling us that these two methods we created here are not being returned here, because remember, we are returning the generator here. Okay, so I don't know if that makes sense. So more like layman explanation, so we don't use grammar to or some terms to confuse ourselves. So what we basically need to do here now is to create those two methods. So the very first method is this one. So I'm just going to quickly copy these. Okay, so I'm just going to copy these here. So this is going to be a receiver function. Okay, so since it's a receiver function, we'll do this. Okay, so let's say generator is going to point to PASETO generator. Okay, you can see what just happened here. The error is disappeared, or is disappearing. Okay, so let's snap these into a new line so that what we're doing would make some sense. Okay, so it's going to return something for us. Let's see what we're returning from here. Okay, we haven't implemented this correctly. So after generating the token, what next? It should return something, right? So it shouldn't just generate, it should return something. So what are we going to return from here? So basically, what we would want to return from here should be, the first thing should be our token. And then the next thing we should return from here will be a payload, and then possibly an error. Okay, so what we'll do here, we can just say here it should be a string, and then what is the authentication payload? Do we have that already? Yes, we created that here, authentication payload. So it should return a string, the authentication payload, and an error for us. Okay, so how about here? If it's verifying a token, it should return the authentication payload and an error to tell us if, okay, all right. So having done that, we can come back here now and say duration. Let's just copy these. Just going to copy these, and we'll return that here. Okay, so our error is back because we're beginning to implement stuffs, right? So this is going to be fixed. So if we hover over it, the error here says you cannot use generator as generator value in return statement. PASETO generator does not implement generate missing method verify token. Okay, so we're going to implement that method. Okay, so the next thing we'll do here is this. If payload an error is equals to new authentication payload. Of course, the new authentication payload we created earlier right here, and it's taking two things, the user data and the duration. So right here, I'm going to say user, which is this, the user data, and the duration. So let's say if error is not equals to new, let's say errors, let's say it should return an empty string. So what we return in string, then the next thing is the authentication payload. Okay, let's just return the payload. No doubt you might want to use it. Let's just return the payload, and then let's return the error. Okay, so at this point, let's see what we can do here. Okay, let's say token error is equals to generator, right, dot PASETO dot encrypt. So what is this encrypt method going to take? Let's click on this. So the encrypt method is going to take the key, that's the byte, so that's our symmetric key. It's going to take in the payload, and it's going to take in the footer. So we won't basically need the footer there. So what we'll do here, the key is the symmetric key. So that will be generator.symmetric key, and then the payload, and of course we won't be needing the footer, so we can say if error is not new, let's return an empty string. Let's also return the payload here, and then let's return the error. So at this point, let's see what can we do here. So at this point, let's say we return the token, we return the payload, and we say there was no error. Okay, so fine, we have been able to implement the generate token method. You can see it's very simple, straightforward. We don't have to do so much. Okay, so let's create another function to validate or to verify our token. So what did we call it? Verify token. So permit me to just copy this back to a PASETO generator. So let's create a function here and paste that. So don't forget, this is a receiver function. So we're going to just grab this. Okay. So with this, we can easily say payload, which is the authentication payload, let's assume is empty. Okay, so let's say error is equals to generator dot PASETO dot decrypt. So what does the decrypt method take? Let's see. The decrypt method is going to take in the token, the symmetric key, the payload, and the footer. Okay, so let me copy this. So right in here, so let's paste this, put that as a comment. So the first thing he's going to take in is the what? The token. It's going to take in the token, the symmetric key. So we're going to say generator dot symmetric key. The next thing is going to take is a payload. So we're going to say payload, and then the next thing is going to take is the footer. I don't think we won't be needing that here. So let's say if error is not equals to nil. Okay, so let's return nil and error. So instead of returning the payload, we don't have any. So let me remove this comment. All right, so right here we're just going to return the payload and nil. So there you go. We've been able to create two methods, one that generates a token and the other one that verifies our PASETO token. Okay, so let's write test cases for this to be sure that what we've done makes sense. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is let's say test PASETO generator. Let's say T, testing the T. Okay, let's create a symmetric key. So I'm going to copy one from somewhere, so which is definitely like a 32-byte symmetric key. Of course yours must not be this, so use something else. This is just for test case. So let's say generator error is equals to new PASETO generator, and it's going to take in the symmetric key. Okay, so let's require, so this is going to get in the stretcher package for us. So let's do make tidy here. Going to install that package for us. Let's say require that there's no error. Require that there's no error. So let's say T. So we're going to assert that there's no error during creation. Okay, so what we can do here, we save this. I think we need to import why are we having this error. Let's see. Why do we have that error? Okay, let's say make tidy. Okay, that should solve our issues for us. So the next thing we're going to do here, let's say require that it is not empty. Let's require that it's not empty. So let's say T, let's require that the generator is not empty. Okay, so if we run these, okay, our test is passing, so we're on track. So the next thing we do, we can say let's define a user and a token duration. So let's say user is that we call, on the interface is X, interfaces dot user data. Okay, so we had something like username, so let me call this test user. Okay, so the next thing we'll do, let's say duration is time dot, let's say duration is time dot minute. So now let's create a token. Let's see what comes out of it. So let's say token payload and an error. So let's say it is generator dot generate token. So we're going to send in this user and we're going to send in the duration. In a typical development environment where you've got like the test-driven environment, or TDD as it's called, of course you know that you write your test before writing the actual code. So what we're doing now is we're writing a test for the code that we've already written. Okay, so what we need to do here, let's require that there's no error. First and foremost, let's require that there's no error with, okay, then the next thing, let's require that it's not empty. So what's not empty? So let's say T, the token. Let's require that the token is not empty. It's not creating an empty token for us. So we are setting that, you know, of course. So let's also require that it's not near. The payload is not empty. It's not near. So let's say near payload. Okay, so let's run this test again. Okay, so our test passed. So our code is correct. So our test just passed. So now let's verify the token. So let me add comments to this. So let's say creating new token. So this one, so what we can do here, let's say verify token. So to verify a token, let's do this. Let's say token payload and error. Let's say generator dot verify token. So I think I just made a mistake here. We don't need, so let's just say instead of payload, let's say verified token. Okay, so remember in our verified token method is returning the authentication payload and the error. So I don't think we won't be definitely needing up to 3 parameters there. So what is this taking? It's going to take in the token. Okay, so this is going to verify that the token created. So let's say require, let's say it's not error. Let's first of all be sure that there's no error. Or what am I writing? So let's say no error. So the test case, and then let's say the error. So let's also assert that the verified token is not near. So let's say verified token. Okay, so of course we need a test there. So let's see. Okay, we can rerun these again. Okay, there is an error. Our test failed there. Let's look at it. Let's see what we're doing wrong. So okay, so why are we getting this error? Can't unmarshal token data to the given type of value. Fail to decode payload. So that means there's something we're doing wrong here. So let's close this and go back to verify token, and then now let's go to the PASETO generator. Okay, verify token, we are not checking if the token, the payload is valid here. So let's do this. Oh, that's an oversight. So let's say error is equals to payload dot valid. So let's say if error is not new. So you can see this is the beauty of writing tests. It allows us to know what we're doing right or wrong. Okay, so we can now go back and run our test. Let's see. So right here, let's rerun this. Okay, we still have the error, failed to decode payload. Okay, just a second. Let's go back there and see what we're doing wrong. So let's go to PASETO generator. Okay. Oh yeah. So this is a pointer. Okay. So that's, we're making the mistake there. Okay. Let's see. All right. So let's test that out. Okay, so our test has passed. So that was our error. So this is the beauty of using or writing test. It enables us to know what we're doing, if we're doing the right thing or not. So okay, so the next test case we're going to write will be, so let's say let's check if the payload matches each other. So what we can do here is this. Let's require that excuse me, is equal. So let's say payload dot username verified token dot user dot username. I believe it was username we used here, yeah. So we didn't include other data like email and the like, so there will be no need to include it there. So let's check if let's run a test to ensure that the actual data we are using to generate token and what we're getting in return, it's valid. Okay, so let's also require that it is within duration. Okay, so let's assume, let's test to be sure that the token hasn't expired. So let's say payload expires at, it's within duration of verified token that expires at, and then let's say in time, let's use seconds instead. Let's say time.second. Okay, so the very last thing we'll do, let's also require that it's issued at is within duration. So let's say payload issued at, verified token issued at, and let's say time.second. Okay, so let's run these and see what we've got. So let's rerun our test. Okay, our test passed, so we are doing the right thing. So now that we've done this, how about we write another test, right, to check for expired PASETO tokens. Okay, so what we can easily do, let's create a function here. So let's say test expired PASETO tokens. Okay, so let's say T testing let's say testing T, yeah. Okay, so let's use this metric key here again. Okay, so permit me to copy this so I don't get to do a lot of rewrites. I think I would need all the way to let me just copy with duration. So we would need all of these. So, but what we'll do differently here, so instead of this, so let's use minus, time minus minutes. So basically setting the token duration to a negative value. Okay, so we can simulate the expired token. Okay, so what we'll do now is we will say token, let's say token payload error. I think we have these here, so I don't need to write. Where's that? Let's get that down here. And we can still grab this down there as well. Okay. So let's say creating the token. Okay, so let's run this test to see. Okay, the test passed. Okay, all right. So the next thing we're going to do is to verify that the token is expired. Okay, so let's just quickly do it. So we're just going to say verified token. Let's say verified token. I think we've got that here, so let's copy this. So we're going to paste that here. We'll save that. So, but what we will do differently here is let's require that is equal to equals to error. So what error were we sending when we were verifying token? Let's check that error message. Okay, I think we created that somewhere in our payload. Okay, yeah. So if token is valid or not, we say token is expired. Okay, so we can do something here. Let's put this in a constant so that we can easily check, or instead of a constant rather, because that's an error, it's not going to work there. So let's say expired token. So I could just call this expired token error. So let's say it's equals to, I'm going to grab this, sorry, that's a variable. So let's say expired token error. Okay, so let's see. I think we're doing something wrong here. Let's see. Okay, okay, should have error in this format. Okay, so let's do it the right way, the way. Okay, so let's say error expired token. Okay, so let's do it the way Golang recommends. All right, so we'll do this. So in our test case now, what we can do in our test case, will be to say SCT error expired token error dot error. Okay, so let's see if the error equals to that, then we know that, okay, or if rather we get that error when the token is expired, we know that we've written a good code. So let's run this to see if our test runs. Okay, our test failed. So what did we do wrong? Let's check this out. Receive unexpected error, token is expired, text expired, PASETO token. Let's see. Okay, so I think this should be error. This should be error. So this is just basically to accept that there was an error during token verification. That's what we want to do there. Okay, so so this rather should be nil, that there was no token, no verified token, and then this should be equals error. Yeah, so I think that's what we ought to do there. So let's check this out. Okay, so our test runs successfully. So another thing we can do is to still create another test for invalid, test for invalid PASETO tokens. Okay, so we can do this on your own. Write a test to check if the token is invalid, right? So we're not going to do that in this tutorial. So let me just quickly create or show you how to call on the generate token. Okay, and then we will end the tutorial there. So we've written quite a few test cases. So the next thing I want us to do, let's quickly create a login instance that would generate a user token for us. So in internals, where we had services, user service. Okay, let's just add it in the, so let's just do a little demonstration. So feel free to use this in your own unique use case. So in this use case, I'm just going to do it here. So in this place where we've got the payload, So I'm going to return a token here. Okay, so let's do this. Let's assume a user was logging in. Okay, so just for the purpose of this tutorial, so I'm not going to, let's say, generate a token. So let's quickly do something here. In the interfaces, you can create, in your own case, what you can do is to create a login response here. So let's just call this login response struct login. Sorry, let's call this log in response. Is going to take in a token of type string. Let's say the JSON representation will be token. Then let's say expires at. It's going to be a time. Let's use time. Time. The JSON representation is going to be let's say expires at. Let me just quickly copy that, but turn this to lowercase, and of course the user. So the user there is going to be of type let's say user data, and then the JSON, let's copy this and say user. Okay, so this, let's assume that this is our login response. Okay, so if we come to what's it called, the handler here, user handler. So at this point where we're creating a new user, let's just generate a token here. Okay, after creating the user, let's generate a token after creating the user. So let's generate a token. Okay, so what we can do here is to do this. Let's say token generator, okay, error is equals to PASETO. Normally, okay, so let's just go ahead. So let's say PASETO dot new PASETO generator. Yeah, I think that works. So we need a symmetric key. So what I will just do is, in our test file, I'm going to copy this symmetric key, but please take note, in your own use case, let's say in a real world project, use a symmetric key from your env. Okay, so it's best to do that, so take note of that. So I'm just going to paste that in there. So this is not done in a real world project, right? So in a real world project, all you just need to do is get that symmetric key from your env file. Okay, so I'm going to go down and say if error is not new, so let's return let's copy this. Okay, error message. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is to say let's look at duration. How long do we want our token to last? We can do this. Let's say error is equals to time dot pass duration. Okay, so another thing you can do is to ensure that you also get this value from your environment variable. So let me also include this. In a real world project, this value should as well come from your environment variable. Okay. All right. So we can now say, let's say if error is not equals to nil, we can do this here. Okay, then we can now say token payload error is equals to, what did we call it, token generator dot generate token. And what is it going to take? The user data. Okay, it's going to take in the user data. And what next is it going to take? Let's see, user data and the duration. Okay, so we can say if error is not nil. Okay, so let's do this here again. Otherwise, we can, instead of returning successful message now, let's return, okay, let's go back to our interface. And okay, let's do this. Let's copy this. Let's copy these. Let's see what we've got here. I'm trying to see how we can quickly revamp this. Okay, we can just return login response. Okay, so let's just, for the sake of this tutorial, so I'm going to comment this out. Or better still, before I do that, let me copy this, then comment it. Login response. So right here, first thing we need is the, what's it called, the token. So let's say token is the token, and the next thing is the expires at, it's a payload that expires at, and then user is, we can return the payload.user. So you can see that this is going to actually create a token for us when we're creating a user. Take note, in a real world project or in a real scenario, we're not expected to do this, so you should do this in your login method. Okay, so let's check what we just did now. So let's go to create a user. Okay, let's see, let's be sure that our endpoint is running. So let's go to terminal and let's say make run. Okay, bind address, something is already running on that port, so let me close, make the port empty. Okay, so the MPI is running. So we can, I think we've got Swagger installed in this. So, but however, let's go ahead to create a user. Okay, duplicate key values. Okay, so this email exists. So I'm going to do this. I'll say showall@gmail.com, username showall. So I hit create. So there you go. So what happened is it generated a token for us. Okay, so the token will expire at this time, and this is a user payload that was generated. So this now is a PASETO token instead of the JWT. So you can see it's v2 local, and then the second part of the token, which has the payload data. So in this payload data has all your sensitive information. Okay, so thank you for watching. If you're new on this channel and the tutorial was helpful, kindly subscribe, leave a like, thumbs up, and take care. Bye bye.